Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Tai, a space where we'll talk about anything and everything surrounding the people that grind through your month-end accounting close.
Hi everyone. Today's episode is the importance of establishing work-life balance as an accounting leader. Our guest today is Giulia Migliaccio, controller at mParticle. On this episode, we talk about the importance of work-life balance, how work-life balance may be affecting the accounting profession, and ways you can balance your time at work with the rest of your life. Now, I'll hand it over to our host, Gapify CEO Jotham Tai.
Hey, Giulia, welcome to the Accounting Life podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Jotham. Thanks so much for having me.
I am very, very, very excited to have this conversation with you. Obviously, I heard about your background in Muay Thai and how that is an important part of your work life balance, also as a controller. And definitely want to dig into that. But just to set up the conversation, I would love to just get your perspectives, and maybe I'll give a quick background that is very obvious to us in the profession. I think accounting leaders, because of the demand of like closes and audits and so on, it's really, really tough. At least historically, I've seen it be very tough to establish good work-life balance. In other words, a lot of the controllers, chief accounting officers that I'm friends with today, we put in a lot of time and work hours, and that's not necessarily good for us individually or the organizations that we serve. So I guess I want to start there, like from a work-life balance perspective. Like, what have you seen historically in the profession? Like, do you see these same struggles, or maybe in recent times has that changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen those struggles. I've been in the profession for a long time. I started working in public companies about 25 years ago. And it was definitely a lot different back then. We didn't have a lot of the same automation that we do now. So closes, especially when you worked at a public company and you have a short window to get a close done, you're working pretty late hours that first 5 to 10 days of the month, probably starting 5 days before the end of the month, getting everything in. So I do remember, really struggling with having that work-life balance. And I started having kids pretty early on in my career too. So that added a layer of complexity to, making sure that I had the time to spend with my family, but still get everything done at work and do it in a way that I could kind of elevate my career and continue growing in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the close specifically, Giulia, I mean, you're mandated a certain like short period, right? And there's no way to make that math work sometimes unless you work more hours. And thankfully, through automation solutions, that can help with that. And hopefully, professionals and leaders like you and I can be more balanced because long term, that's important. And
Absolutely.
so I guess, yeah. And I guess segueing into that, obviously there's a lot of talk in the industry these days about the mass exodus in the accounting profession. A lot of that is attributable to just people fed up with manual spreadsheet work. But do you think part of that too is because work-life balance is harder to achieve?
Well, I feel like it's definitely come a long way. And I don't know if it's because I've made that change to the startup world. Working in a public company, you have much more strict deadlines and you have to get things done by a certain point because things have to be filed. And then you go to a startup where it's a private company and things are way more lackadaisical. But I generally try to get my private companies working as if we are a public company. So I like our closes to be between 5 and 6 days. I want our financials to be ready to be reported to our CFO. They can, they have all of the information at their fingertips for the board. And through the years, I've just worked on really putting in efficient processes so that when we get to the end of the month, a lot of the work is already done and we're not struggling to, get everything in and work super long hours. So my team does not ever work past 5 or 6 p.m. I kind of make it a rule now too, that I don't want them to be burnt out. We have a small team. There's only 3 of us, and um, we're a 250 person company. So it might not be huge, but for 3 people to kind of handle all the financials for that, it is a lot of work. And my biggest fear is any of my team being burnt out, because then the work will suffer at that point. So
Yeah.
as
Well,
long as we all know what needs to get done and everybody's calling out for help when we do need it, and we make it work. And I think they appreciate that I'm not kind of badgering them all the time.
well, I want to acknowledge a very important point that I think gets overlooked a lot in our profession and in the craft of closing the books, which is if you can be strategic about spreading the work throughout the month, you don't have to have closes that end at 10 p.m. at night, right? So yeah, I've seen this before where people are just waiting to start something that they could have started earlier in the month, and they let everything just build up. And of course it's crazier if you let, I don't know, if you start, like, for example, with bank statements, these standard exercise of recording transactions that are auto debits. You can do that throughout the month. You can access your online account, but some teams work or wait until you get the statement like on day 2 or 3 before starting that process. So yeah, I love that point, Julia. And I think the more you can spread it out, obviously, yeah, the more, the less work you have to do at month end.
Yeah. And a lot of companies have started to go remote, which I think helps, but also hurts, because like I know working remotely, I'm always on 24 hours a day. If I get an email, I'm checking it. If I'm getting a Slack, I'm checking it and responding. And so it's really kind of hard to turn it off. So I've kind of forced my team to A, try to turn it off, but B, if you need to do something during the day, during working hours, go do it. You're going to be answering an email at 7 p.m. If you want to go to the gym at 10 a.m., go to the gym, get that hour in, do what you need to do. I think it's really important to kind of stress that you need to have a work-life balance, because when you burn out, I've been at that point where I've burnt out, and it's not pretty, and it's really hard to get back into it after that point.
And I think, Julia, there's a cycle where if you're not able to turn off as you describe, and if you're always on, then your mind gets consumed with work, and then you burn yourself out because of it. And yeah, this is, I think, a good segue into your hobby and passion in Muay Thai. Like, I think whether it's going to the gym in your example, incorporating a hobby, or just doing something different that is not work, to have your mind be consumed with something exciting and different, I think is a very effective way of avoiding burnout. So on that note, Julia, I'd love to hear the story of how you initially got into Muay Thai.
Absolutely. So I was a gym rat, but I was really into like spin and yoga and very calm, relaxing workouts. And my husband and I joined a gym locally, and they had a Muay Thai program. And he was like, you have to try that. And I thought he was insane. I was like, they're punching each other. I don't want to do that. I relented, and I took a class, and from there, I just couldn't stop. The classes, I did just regular basic classes for a year. And then one of our coaches was like, hey, I'm doing a women's only camp, learn how to spar. I was like, okay, sure, why not? And then I was hooked. I was sparring. And then my coach was like, I think you're ready for a fight. And I'm like, I think you're right. So I've been doing it for 8 years now. And I don't think I will ever stop.
Do you have so do you compete and actually have fights, and do you have a record, Julia?
Yes. So my record is 2-1. And I've also done what's called a smoker, where it's basically a fight and in the same type of setting, but there's no judging. So, but you get that whole same feeling of, being in the middle of a fight and having fans screaming and pushing you on, and your 3 rounds of 2 minutes and getting through it. So, I feel like it's the perfect way to kind of start and then decide to go into fighting.
Very sarcastic question, but I'll ask anyway because sometimes I like to be cheesy on these episodes. The rush that you get in a Muay Thai fight, is it the same rush you get closing the books or squeezing through that last journal entry for the month before you do your hard close? I'm sure it's similar.
Oh, it's the same. It's exactly the same.
Oh gosh, dude, that is an amazing story. And of course, like just by that association alone makes you one of the cooler accounts I've ever had on the podcast. And
Well, that's the great thing about Muay Thai is that there are people of all different, industries and professions and life, you have older people, you have younger people, it's just the most amazing mix of people. And there have been other accountants that do it. So
very true. We'd like to get more of those on our podcast. If you're out there, Mr. or Miss Accountant who also is in MMA or Muay Thai, feel free to contact me directly. We'd love to hear your story. But yeah, Giulia, going back to work-life balance, I'm sure when you first discovered, it sounds like you just got hooked. Was it hard for you to balance that with, career and then also like knowing that you're a parent too outside of work? Did it kind of just happen and balance each other organically, or did you have to apply specific tactics to make it all work in terms of time?
yeah, so for regular training, it really was very organic. It's just like, spending an hour at the gym. But when I started going into more of the fighting mode, when you do a fight camp, you're looking at putting 3 to 4 hours a day at the gym, 5 days a week. So it's a huge time commitment. And I really just had to balance making sure that I had the work covered that I needed to get done during the week so that I had that time to go and put 3 hours at the gym at night. Sometimes I had to go at night. Sometimes I go in the morning. It really depends on what's on my calendar for the day and where I can kind of fit it in. And my kids are all athletes as well. My girls play softball. My son plays football and baseball. And I think because they see me kind of doing everything, they feel like they can do everything. And my oldest daughter is actually an accountant. She started working at Deloitte this year. She just graduated.
Oh, wow.
So I'm super glad to like pass on the torch to somebody new.
Yeah, you can talk about ASC 606 during dinners.
Yes, she loves that.
Oh, don't we all? Don't we all? Well, yeah, so I'm gathering then that a big part of like finding something that you like to do and making the work-life balance works is just finding something that's very exciting to you organically, right? And I think I've struggled with this in the past. So in times where I've tried to balance myself out with other personal things, I don't think I've found something exciting enough. And so if I don't find something exciting enough, then it's harder for me to make sacrifices to my work time. So, for you, it sounds like you were also, and I guess that's a beauty too of like accounting and accounting leadership roles. You don't have to, you can probably plan your schedules, work schedules to coincide with your personal one. You have more control. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially working in the startup world where it really is a lot easier to kind of schedule it how I want to schedule it. And with the remote work, it's also, it makes it even easier to do that. I'm also very lucky that in the past 3 startups that I've been at, I've had leadership teams that were very, very vocal in making sure that everyone in the team had work-life balance and could do the things that they like to do and want to do outside of just their job. So I don't know if I would have been able to do it this way when I was working at public companies, but I think when you find something that you love as much as this, you find a way to do it. It's really just making sure that you set your priorities to what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Well, there's also plan B, right? If your management team or CFO objects to you carving out that time, show them the fist and change their minds right away.
Throw an elbow or a knee. It'll get them every time.
Oh, that is so awesome. And yeah, I guess as we start wrapping up here, for the audience and all seriousness here, I think there is, and this is so important. And again, I don't think this gets talked enough of this doesn't get talked about enough. The fact that we accounting leaders can be more productive if we have good balance all around our lives. And I see a lot of my peers and colleagues over the years, and I see it like a river, right? You just get swept by the current and you get through one close and audit and then into the next close, and it's hard for us to like hop out of that cycle. So if you, Giulia, have to give advice to someone who is kind of stuck and just getting dragged into one close to another, having a hard time like balancing it out, like what would be some advice that you would give for those types of leaders that are having a hard time figuring out work-life balance?
I would definitely say to try to find something that kind of piques your interest, whether it's reading a good book or taking a walk or going to the gym, just something that kind of takes your mind off of it, even if it's just for an hour a day or a half an hour a day, because you really need to let your mind kind of get away from it in order to look at it better. And I tell my team this all the time, whenever they're struggling with a reconciliation or a transaction and they're having a hard time, I'm like, maybe take a walk, come back in an hour, let's discuss it. You look at it with fresh new eyes and it doesn't feel as monotonous as it was if you just take that small little break, even if it's small.
I would guess that from a risk management perspective, if one of your staff has been staring at the same spreadsheet for 8 hours, there's good probability that there's maybe some quality to be reviewed there as well, versus someone who's fresh and just looking at it most holistically and strategically. So that is really good advice. And again, it's just so exciting to talk to someone who's been able to balance a career with something as exciting as Muay Thai. And last set of questions, and I promise more cheesiness here. So if you had to pick a Muay Thai move to figuratively, not physically, address common issues in accounting, I'll give you some scenarios and I'd love to hear what kind of move you would apply for it or to it. So late invoice comes in, material not accrued. What Muay Thai move would you use for that?
Late invoice. I might throw an elbow to kind of slice it right through.
Yeah. 500K invoice off period. There you go. What about significant additional audit samples?
Oh, those would definitely get a teep right to the face.
Right on the kisser. Yep. I think that's the best way to make sure those scenarios don't come up again. Closing the books at year end on day 20.
Oh, that's just horrific. That might need a few knees.
Ooh, not one knee, but two.
Not one. I would definitely get somebody in the clinch for that and throw 3 to 4 knees at a time.
Is there such thing as a double knee on that note, Giulia? Like a double knee move? I guess it would be a flying double knee. Is that a thing?
Well, not a flying double knee, but we clinch in Muay Thai, which means that we'll grab each other around the neck and pull them in. So you can throw a lot of knees if you have that person in the clinch.
All right. I definitely will not be closing the book slate under your supervision. Oh, Giulia, this is such a fun and amazing conversation. I am so appreciative of you coming in and doing this podcast. And we'd love to have you back on if you're interested. And I'm sure we can find other angles with Muay Thai and accounting. Those intersect very naturally, I guess.
Absolutely. It was great to have the conversation with you.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining, Giulia.
Thanks, Jotham. Take care.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.